Okay, thank you. And if you could just stop sharing your screen so I could just switch over real quick. Perfect, thank you. Right, and all right, everyone. So now we're gonna get more into actual more complexity in the finance world. We're getting down to the basics right now. So we're gonna start with discount rates and risk. Okay, so first, so what are we trying to determine is what is the present value of your dollar? Okay, so when you have $1,000, let's say you have $1,000 right now in 2024, right? But then you also have the option to have $1,000 in 2018. All right, you have two great options. What do you choose? You obviously want to choose the one that's dated before, because what you can do with your 2018 dollars is you can take those $1,000 and you can invest. And with the rate of return on the S&P 500, you can receive 10% on average. That's on average. Obviously, there's down years like 2022 and stuff like that. But what you're going to do is you're going to buy the S&P 500 because you chose the smart way and you understand investing. So when you do that, let's see how much money you make in 2024. I'm going to get rid of this. And now you have $1,772. So you chose the smart path. You decided that in 2018, you understood that your value is for each of your dollars is worth more because you understand investing, you understand how the S&P 500 works, and you decided to invest that $1,000, and now you have $1,772, which is a rough estimate. And of course, you do have to consider inflation. Inflation is a very important thing to consider. So we're also going to consider that. So we'll get rid of this. And let's just see. So the long-term inflation rate, I don't know. I can't get this out of my way right now. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, we'll do this. So we'll just look up whatever, long-term inflation rate. All right. So long-term inflation rate for the US, on average, it's 3.28%. Okay. So now we're going to consider that in our valuation of your dollar in 2018 compared to now. So we're going to add that. We're going to change this to 3.28%. And now you see that your average return comes down to 6.72%. So now we are considering inflation. So those $1,000 that you invested in 2018 is still worth 1,477, which is greater than 2024. And that just kind of shows how this time in the market is opportunity to make money, right? When you put your money into the market and you give it time, you get opportunity, and that opportunity makes your money worth more. So this would be the present value, the purchasing power you would have in 2024, considering you invested in the S&P 500. Okay, this might be confusing right now, so I recommend that you come back and watch it a few more times, but that just kind of simplifies it and then probably the easiest way right now. Also, we're going to move over to this one. So now we look at $1,000 in 2024, but also you could have had that, or you could have had $700 in 2018. Okay, so what do you pick? I don't know. Let's see. So we're gonna take our rate of return on the S&P 500, and let's see what we get the first year. So after first year, we get $747 in 2019, and this includes inflation too. We're actually only getting 6.72% because this is our purchasing power, right? So now let's see what we're going to get at the end of the cycle of investing. We're going to be better off. We're still going to have a $1,000 and $34, which is going to be greater than what that $1,000 you get in 2024. So in this case, in 2018, if you had the choice of getting $1,000 in 2024 or getting $700 now, it would be the best choice to pick that $700 now, because you know that with the S&P, with the average rate of return of the S&P, you can get these returns and hope that your money will now be worth $1,034. And that just kind of explains the basics of returns and also the present value of your dollar. So as time goes on, you have this opportunity to make more with your money. That's just kind of the basics of that. All right. So now we're going to move over to the net present value calculations with terminal growth. So what is the present value of your earnings? Okay, so this is kind of the question we're looking to answer right now. So let's just say, let's say we have this $5 right now. Apple has $5. Okay. Now the problem is that we also have this thing called inflation. We just talked about it. But now we're going to assess inflation as being the discount rate. So what the discount rate is it's going to be your inflation. So that original inflation of 3.28%, right? So we have that percent. So we know we have that percent. So we'll just simplify it to, let's see, going to multiply this. We're just gonna make it let's see. I'm just gonna simplify this to 3% just to make this go a little faster. Let's see. So let's just consider that inflation, your average inflation is around 3%. Because that's about what it is. It's 3.28, but similar. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at $5 and we're going to look at the depreciation of this $5 as time goes on. We know that the inflation is 3%. So what does that mean? That means that your $5 loses 3% of its purchasing power every year. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take that $5. We're going to find 97% of it, because that would be 3% less, right? And we're going to do that for every year. All right, so we'll do that. I think if I drag this now. Yeah. All right, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna drag it down to this final year. So these are all years, right? So let's see, any year. So let's see, we got 2085. Your $5 actually has the purchasing power of $0.78 in 2085, in the year 2085. And this is because of inflation, right? And this is something you have to deeply consider when you're investing in the stock market. Apple, when they make $5 right now, their $5 is not going to be, if they hold on to that $5, it is not going to be $5 in the future. It's not going to have the same purchasing power. Yes, it will be $5, but it does not have the same purchasing power. So what I mean exactly by that is that $5, see, so we got $5. And now we got that. And let's see here. Sum this. Yep. So during this time period, from however many years this is, let's see, 2001 53 minus, let's see, how many years do we have here? Okay, so in 129 years, so 129 years, your $5 has depreciated its purchasing power down to 10 cents. Okay. And that's because of inflation. That's because of the discount rate, because average inflation is 3%. That's what we're considering. We look right here, it's still 0.97 percent of the last figure, the last year. And that's just kind of how value. But okay, but now what you need to understand though is that in 2153, that year, right? You have 10 cents, right? But you still have $5, but your $5 is only 10 cents. And that's just kind of, inflation is a little hard to understand, but I hope that clears it up just for the most part. But from there, so understanding that purchasing power decreases, but we also need to understand that during those 129 years, right? You have collected $650. Okay, great. I've collected $650, but no, it's not $650. And that's because that $650 has a different purchasing power because of inflation. Because every year that $5 has decreased its value a little bit. So the actual value of 129 years receiving the same $5 from 2024 is actually only worth $162.85. That's how much money, that's how much purchasing power you have. And when we look at present value, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at purchasing power. That's the important part. Hmm. Yep. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm going at right now. And I think you guys probably understand a little bit about this, but that's exactly what I'm going about when I say this stuff, what I said with the purchasing power decreasing. When you save, when you're not in the market, like we looked at over here, when you're not in the market, you're $1,000 in 2024, right? Or you could have been in 2018 with that $1,000, but that was actually a better opportunity for you because you could have invested in the S&P and you could have now have $1,477 considering average growth. All right. So that's just kind of important why you need to invest. Um, all right. So that's the simple part of the discount rate is that inflation amount. But now we need to consider more. We need to consider more with the discount rate. And that's where the actual interest rate comes in. Okay. So the US, I believe right now the bonds have a interest rate of around 4.5%. And our US bonds are pretty safe. We don't have to worry too much about them. But we're gonna check out a few investors. Okay. So we have our friend Warren Buffett. We all know Warren Buffett. We're going to say that we give Warren Buffett $5. And actually, well, we want more than this. We want around 5%. Um, what we understand from Warren Buffett is that okay, we'll give him $5, and all we're expecting back is 5%. Because we know Warren Buffett, he's probably gonna do it. 5% of the time he might fail, but 95% of the time he's going to get your money back. You're probably going to get your money back in your wallet. So that's why we put that risk at 5%. That's why we put the interest rate for Warren Buffett at 5%, right? But now we look at our friend Marcus. Marcus is a school teacher. I don't know, it's just some random guy, right? He's a school teacher. He teaches science class for eighth graders, right? Marcus doesn't know much about the market. So we're going to say to Marcus, hey Marcus, we'll give you that $5, but you have to give us 60% back because to be worth it, Marcus is a lot riskier, right? So we're going to expect greater returns. Okay, so I think that concept is a little bit clearer now. We got that, right? So now we're going to look at a company. All right. So HPQ. HPQ is the stock I'm doing my report on right now. So just looking at their net income, um, we got some net income values. Fiscal year 18. These are all real values. I pulled them from the SEC. But looking up to here, we got fiscal year 24. Okay. Now this is where it gets fun. This is where our forecasting starts. We're gonna finish this in webinar 3, I'm sorry. So next webinar, but this is just some basic forecast. So from my projections, I got that HBQ in 2024, it's probably going to grow 10% their income, net income. And then in fiscal year 25, they're going to grow that by 1.40%. And there's reasons behind that. They'll be in my report when I finish it. And then fiscal year 26, I'm expecting them to grow 1.30 or 30%. I'm sorry. And then we go here. Fiscal year 27, I'm expecting them to actually fall. Okay, so they're going to fall 20%. So they lose 20% of their net income next year. And then fiscal year 28, I give them 1.10% or 10% of growth. And we'll give them 10% in 2029. And let's see here. Got that. Oops. Change that real quick. I think I got the wrong value here. Hold on just a second. All right. So now we give them another 10% of growth. And finally, fiscal year 30, we're going to drop them down to around 5% because that's when we start losing track of some of our value. Let's see here. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So try and show this. Let's do this real quick. I think this is the formula. Let's see if that's right. No. Okay, we'll do that in a second. It's fine. Okay, but now you can see my growth value. So for fiscal year 24, I'm expecting Hewlett Packard to grow their net income by 10%, 1.1. Okay. Fiscal year 25, I'm expecting them to grow their net income by 1.4, so 40%, right? Fiscal year 26, 30%. Fiscal year 27, I'm expecting them to lose some of their net income just because of some of the trends in the computer market. I'm not going to go fully into that, but just because of some of the trends, they're going to drop negative 20%. Okay. And fiscal year 28, 1.1, so 10% again. Fiscal year 29, same thing, 10%. Fiscal year 30, 5% growth. So how did I come up with all these values just now? How did I just say that in fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27, that all these variations are going to happen? Okay, how did I do this? How did I know to do that? Okay, so here's the thing. I didn't. Okay. That's the thing with finance. Finance is about predicting future events using old data, but you have to be risk cautious. Okay. So now we're going to drag the discount rate back into this. Okay. So we know that with my forecast, we're getting around a net present value of 63,343. I think this would be in billions. I think, yeah, it would be, or no, I'm not 100% sure. Don't worry about that part right now. But let's just say that Hewlett Packard is a smaller company. We're not considering how big it is today. I mean, these values are right, but I don't know the full values right now. But their net present value is $63,343. All right, great. So I got those values. But I told you guys that I found these values. I just made them up. I made them up based on my understanding of the computer market and what would happen to it. So I decided that in fiscal year 25, because of conditions in the computer market, they would be growing their net income by 40%. Okay. So now what, or I'm sorry, fiscal year 25. Yeah, I think I said that. But now I did not consider risk yet. And like we did before, we used our discount rate to calculate the present value as the depreciation happens each year because your purchasing power of $1 now is going to decrease with inflation. All right. So now what we're going to do is add our discount rate to HPQ. Okay. So let's use 3%. All right. So this is just inflation. So we just dropped our net present value down to $50,881. And that net present value is there because if you just check the formula, so basically this is a sum and then they just average in your discount rate. The formula will actually be in the spreadsheet I have that we will use for forecasting in webinar 3. So don't worry about that. But that's our net present value considering our discount rate. All right. But now we think that, okay, so we got the 3%, that's inflation, right? But like Warren Buffett, like Marcus was our guy. Those two guys, like them, there's also other risk. There's other risk because HPQ could go to 0 tomorrow. We don't know if that's going to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to look into the volatility of the company. All right. So we know HPQ, I mean, they're making money, so they're doing good, right? But their stock's not trading horizontal. It's not always perfect, you know? So what we need to do is we need to consider some of this volatility here in our discount rate. So how we can do that is we can just kind of look how volatile it is. I mean, they are making money, so that's something to consider. Considering they're making money, inflation's 3% right now. I'm going to use a discount rate of 7%. Okay. So that 7% drops it down to $39,000. That's their net present value now with a 7% discount rate, right? So now we got that. Okay, great. So we just figured out how much value this company will have in around fiscal year 30. Okay, but what happens now? Okay. So fiscal year 31 comes. Is HPQ just going to shut down? No, they're not going just going to shut down. They're going to continue their business. But what we're going to do in our financial model is we're almost just going to apply this simple number. What we do is we just do this and we just times by 99%. And the reason why is that companies do not just go away. HPQ is not going away after fiscal year 2031, right? They're just going to continue. They're going to continue as a business. But at this point, we cannot keep forecasting like these high percentages. So we're just going to say like at this point, the company just starts to lose some of its value. And it's not that much of its net income. So we're just going to pull it out for a while. This is just, we're just going to keep pulling it out if I can here. Let's see. Well, if I'm not sure why I can on this, but normally what I would do is pull this out to around like fiscal year 50. And at that point, I mean, yes, the net present value has decreased a little bit. Well, actually, in this case, they've increased it because they are positive with their income. But it doesn't make that much effect on the like overall value of the company just because it's a small percent. So what that 99% decrease, or I'm sorry, 1% decrease, what I call that is the maturity value. Now, the maturity value is what I just applied because companies do not end after fiscal year 30. They keep growing, right? But you cannot keep forecasting something 10 years in advance. You don't know that far ahead in the future. So you just need to give it something at least. So just a 1% decrease, so we'll call it negative 1%. It's going to be our maturity value. And from there, we just got our net present value. So the net present value of HPQ right now is around 48,223. I think that would be, I want to say that's in billions. So I could be wrong. I want to say it's in billions. Yeah. So that's around our net present value of the company. Okay, that's great. So we just did this. I know most of the time you do this with cash flows, but we didn't do it with cash flows because the net income just makes it easier. In the future, we will use cash flows to do this, but for now, we're just going to use net income. And we'll actually create a model in the next webinar, like I said. All right. So that just kind of sums up this stuff. Yeah, we'll move over to the SEC filings next. I think we'll cover this fully in the next webinar just because of time constraints right now. So just looking at SEC statements. So I explained this in the first webinar. So what is an SEC statement? Let's see. So the SEC. Ion, can you see this right now? The SEC? Okay, perfect. All right. So we go on to the SEC. Every company that is a USA company, any company that is in the USA, has its headquarters in the USA, has to file these reports if they want to trade in the stock market. So as I think, let's see if Cloudflare, it's right here. So we can go to Cloudflare. And we'll look here. Okay, and now look at all these weird statements. Okay, we got AK, 10K, and 10Q. Yeah, I've never heard of these, or you guys have never heard of these, whatever. All right, so these are very important. So in AK, what these reports show is just any event. It's any event that's happened. Could be a news release, an earnings release, change in securities, a vote. Look, we got votes here. All right. So these are, they're not that important typically. What are most important on the SEC is the 10K and the 10Q. We are going to be working with these like heavily in the next webinar and also after that. And that's because a 10K and 10Q both paint a picture of what your company is doing. All right. So when you go on the 10K, it's a little confusing. So what I do from here is I just go here, I look at the filing, and then I open the document right here. And these are all free because companies have to file this. All right, so this is great. So we're going to do consolidated, let's see, consolidated statements of income of operations. I go on these all the time. Consolidated statements of operation, and here are all our values. You know, for HPQ, I had the values for net income going back to 2017, 2018, and that's because you can get all those values from the SEC, right? So here we can see that Cloudflare, at the moment, they are, looks like, yeah, they have a net loss, it looks like. So that's okay. I mean, it is a technology company. I mean, Uber, for example, they didn't make money until last year, which is outstanding. They didn't make any net income until last year. So some of these tech companies, they have different valuations. Cloudflare doesn't look like they're making money yet, but that's all right. So from here we can see all this. So we got the income statement, consolidated statements of operations, and also if we scroll down, we got cash flows. And let's see, should be the balance sheet somewhere. Hmm, sometimes see they so the problem with the SEC though is that there's a lot of stuff on this. These have to be filed for the government for government reasons, but they have stuff for investors as well. So I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to find some of these. I might have just scrolled right past it. It's not right there. Oh, here it is. Okay, it was up at top. There. So the balance sheet as well on Cloudflare. So we got those three financial statements. We know those three financial statements, the cash flow statement, income statement, and the balance sheet. Those are the most important things when you're looking at fundamentals, right? So we can see all these assets and all the liabilities and everything else. So that's just great about the SEC. They have data from many, many years. I mean, there's things like FactSet. You guys might have heard of it. FactSet does cost a lot of money, but the SEC is free, and that's just what we're going to be using. I mean, FactSet alone to get data from it, I think it's, oh, I could be wrong. It's definitely over 1,000 a year, and it might even be over that $1,000 a month just to pay for data, which is outstanding. It's crazy, but the SEC is free and it's an available resource. Of course, you can only get it for companies filed in the US, but it's a great resource, and I definitely recommend you guys using it. And just here we got some more information, but I think for now we're just gonna cut the we're gonna cut this. I think we got everything for now. I'm gonna go more into the SEC statements when we're in webinar 3, just for reasons, because some of these values are really important. So I really want to cover these. So I think I'm gonna end there. Yeah, I think that's all for now. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything? Okay. Yeah, and then we'll move over to questions right now. Let's see. Mhm. Oh, okay. So the maturity value, right? So I typically use -1% because my idea is that, like, okay, so a company like Apple, how big can a company get? I mean, IBM, it was huge, it was a huge company in the 80s, the 90s, right? But then it started to fall because it just got so big, right? So at that point, for a growth company like that, I typically set it at -1% just to be almost I wouldn't say it it's kind of more safe to use that instead of generous. I mean, I guess you could put it at 1% where you're actually giving it value after fiscal year 31 or fiscal year 30 after your forecast. And that would be really generous to the business, but a -1% for the maturity value is probably a good range to hit. But if a company is really risky or something like that, I maybe even would move that value a little bit. So maybe even throw it to 1%, not a negative value, if that kind of answers your question. Yeah. All right. And do we have any other questions? If not, that's okay. I think I covered a lot. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it is a little confusing. I did talk fast just to get our time in, but the recording, hopefully, I hope it recorded. It will be posted in the Slack and on the website. So you'll see those there. And I think, yeah, that's it. If we have any more questions, just say something now, but we'll end in a second. All right. And yeah, I think we're good, Ion. We just hit 8:46 p.m. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. And I hope you guys learned a lot. I said the recording will be posted, but yeah, thank you. Have a good night, guys. Yep, thank you. Bye.